like to call today's State Land Board meeting to order. Today is August 13th, 2024, and we are in the beautiful Slough, South SOU Reserve research area. We're so glad to be here. And let's see. We have an agenda today. We'll start off with the consent items, which we start off with approval of the minutes. Item number 1.
Madam Chair, move approval of the minutes from the June 11th, 2024 State Land Board meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Madam Secretary, thank you. Any objections to the minutes? Any changes? Seeing none, minutes approved. Moving on to our action items today, we have several action items. I'm not aware of any public testimony for these items, but we'll start off with item number 2 regarding the Rocky Shores habitat. And good morning, Director Walker.
Good morning. I hope you all had a pleasant drive down here, whether it was over the weekend or today. I had my 50th class reunion in Reedsport over the weekend and have been here and there, and we have a lot going on. So we're happy to have you here for the 50th anniversary of the South Slough. Agenda item 2 is whether the State Land Board should initiate permanent rulemaking to formally incorporate new rocky habitat designations identified in Part 3 of Oregon's Territorial Sea Plan. The authorities are set out below. Oregon's marine rocky habitats are integral to the unique landscape and seascape of the Oregon coast. They provide a safe harbor for a variety of species and mark that place between land and sea. The living resources found include fish, invertebrates, and plant life, as well as seabirds and seals that use the adjacent cliffs and offshore rocks for shelter, feeding, and reproduction. And you can see a lot of that here at Shore Acres Park, which is a pretty exciting place, and where I got married 50 years ago almost. Below the surface, rocky habitats offer stable footing for structure-forming marine plants such as kelp and seagrass. These marine plants provide a foundation for the diverse, unique, and economically important species that live in the rocky habitats, which is why it's really important to protect these areas. So Part 3 of Oregon's Territorial Sea Plan outlines the state's rocky habitat management strategy, and it was originally published in 1994, so quite some time back. The plan is managed by the Ocean Policy Advisory Council and the Department of Land Conservation and Development, and it outlines those clear policies that we should all be living by and direction for strong site-based management and the protection of those unique ecosystems. After a 3-year public review process, an updated Part 3 of the Territorial Sea Plan was adopted in April of 2023. You can see that in your notebook as Appendix A. The Department of State Lands needs to undertake rulemaking under OAR 141-142 to incorporate the changes that have been made. Upon Land Board approval today to initiate that rulemaking, we will be drafting the proposed rules and develop a notice of proposed rulemaking, as well as an evaluation of fiscal impact. We will gather input on the proposed rules through a public comment period, but we won't be convening a rulemaking advisory committee because there was a 3-year exhaustive period of public comment. We will take into consideration public comment and input from local and state agencies, tribal governments, and affected parties to determine the appropriate final proposed rules that will come back to you for adoption at a future meeting. So today, the department recommends the State Land Board authorize the Department of State Lands to initiate permanent rulemaking under OAR, Oregon Administrative Rules, 141-142 to formally incorporate the new rocky habitat designations identified in Part 3 of Oregon's Territorial Sea Plan.
Thank you, Director. I'll entertain a motion and then we'll see if there are any questions.
Madam Chair, move approval of the recommendation that the land board authorize the department to initiate permanent rulemaking to formally incorporate the new Rocky Habitat designations, part 3 of the territorial seal.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Do I hear a second?
You hear a second?
Thank you. So our motion before us is to take up the recommendation. Any questions, comments? I'm just glad to see the progress here. Are there any objections to the motion? Seeing none, motion passes. Thank you. We'll move on to item number 3.
Item number 3 is whether the State Land Board should authorize the Department of State Lands to conduct a direct sale of 0.57 acres of new state-owned filled land to Fortuna Cannery, LLC. The property is located on the Astoria waterfront in Clatsop County at Township 8 North, Range 8 West, Section 7CA, and a portion of tax lots 401 and 402 you can see Appendix A for a site map of the proposed land transaction. The authorities are set out below, and on the screen today we have Jenny Bricker and Rob Gartner, who are available to answer questions. Jenny is counsel for the Fortuna Cannery, but they are not signed up to testify. It's just if you have questions, they're available to you. So Fortuna Cannery is a local business operating the Cannery Pier Hotel and Spa along the Astoria waterfront at 10 Basin Street. It's a lovely facility. They are current lessee of the department. The Fortuna Cannery owns improvements on the state-owned filled lands and adjacent Oregon-owned waterway along this waterfront. These new lands were filled between July 1969 and September 1971 to add storage and access to the docks. Fortuna Cannery later purchased these improvements while the state continued to retain ownership of the submerged, submersible, and filled lands. The lessee currently uses that area as a parking area and an access point and a small open space. The Port of Astoria owns the adjacent uplands. In June 2021, Fortuna Cannery applied to purchase the filled lands within tax lots 401 and 402 from the department. And the land board in October 12 of 2021 approved the department conducting the due diligence. And you can see that in Appendix B. And one of the questions I had of my staff in Appendix B is that back in October of 21, we indicated it was 0.7 acres of filled land. And they responded to me that we had an appraisal, and then it was determined that it was the amount that we're looking at today, 0.57 acres. So we're here today following the approval to conduct that due diligence. The department circulated the proposed land sale for a 30-day public comment period. And the department received one comment from the City of Astoria planner indicating the requirement to partition the subject parcel prior to the sale. So the staff had an appraisal done and conducted, and it determined the value of the land to be $315,715, which the department believes is a fair value. In accordance with administrative rules OAR 141-067-0220, paren 7, paren B, the property will be required to be partitioned from the parent tax lot to be deemed a legal lot of record. Prior to closing, the department will require the applicant to complete, to complete that partition as stipulated in the draft purchase and sale agreement that you can see as Appendix D. We're recommending today that the State Land Board authorize the direct sale of 0.57 acres of filled land in Clatsop County to Fortuna Cannery, LLC for the negotiated price of $315,715. Now I'll get some water.
Thank you, Director. Anything else on that?
No, that would be it.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll entertain a motion on the recommendation.
Madam Chair, move approval of the recommendation. Land board authorized the direct sale of 0.57 acres filled land in Clatsop County to Fortuna Cannery LLC for $315,715.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Do I have a second?
You do have a second.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. For the motion before us, I will say I've literally walked on that land, having stayed at the hotel. So, any comments, questions?
Love the Canary.
Okay, there you go. That's 2 out of 3. Have you been there? Have you stayed there? Oh, you've got to stay there, Mr. Treasurer. Okay. Any objections? Seeing none, motion passes. We're on to item number 4.
Great, thank you. I'll invite Patricia Fox, the manager of the SOU Reserve, to join me. The issue before us today is whether the land board should authorize the reserve to apply to become a Ramsar site, which will earn the reserve the recognition of being a quote, wetland of international importance. We're all pretty excited about this. The Management Commission voted to support this proposal moving forward. So I'll be happy to have Patricia share that with you. The authorities are set out below in your packet. And Patricia, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, Governor Protect, Treasurer Reed, and Secretary Griffin-Vilade. I'm happy to be here. For the record, my name is Patricia Fox, and I'm the Reserve Manager here at the SOU National Estuarine Research Reserve. As Vicki stated this morning, the issue at hand is whether the land board should authorize the reserve to apply to become a Ramsar site, which will earn this reserve the recognition of being a wetland of international importance. So, as you all know, the reserve manages nearly 7,000 acres of natural habitat, including open water channels, tidal and freshwater wetlands, riparian areas, and forested wetlands. Our mission is to really proceed with research, education, and stewardship while promoting public recreation. And being a Ramsar is an intergovernmental treaty that provides the framework for the conservation and wise use of wetland and their resources. The designation brands the reserve as a wetland of international importance. And the first designation in the world was actually in Australia in 1974. There are just over 2,500 sites throughout the world. And let's see. No. I don't know how to advance it, Ted. Just one side. Thank you. And in the US, there's only 41. So to note, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration Office for Coastal Management has been encouraging and supporting all of the National Estuarine Research Reserves to apply for recognition as Ramsar sites. All 3 reserves in California are already designated, and the reserve in Padilla Bay in the state of Washington is in the process. The Ramsar designation has no regulatory authority. There is no cost to apply, but there are some potential benefits that we think would be great for our reserve. Coordination and communication with other Ramsar sites on an international scale. Particularly, we've heard from our California reserves that they have improved their coordination and communication with the other Ramsar sites in Mexico, as well as increasing brand recognition and awareness of the reserve. You actually have to put signage showing that you are a Ramsar site, and that sparks a little bit of curiosity from the public and others. And it can highlight the value and importance of the reserve to the public and to the congressional representatives. So it's a nice story to tell in Washington. Last year, NOAA staff joined the SOU Reserve Management Commission meeting to explain the benefits of becoming a Ramsar site. There were no public questions or comments, and it was approved at the September 2023 meeting. As well, if we do receive the approval by the land board to apply, I'll make sure to check in with ODFW, our sister agency, to make sure that they have full support for this. I have been working with our 3 federally recognized tribes on the Oregon coast and received the initial support from the Confederated Tribes of the Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siuslaw Indians, the Coquel Indian Tribe, and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians. So all 3 were coordinated with for this designation, and our conversations will continue if we are allowed to apply. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a question.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, go right ahead.
Could you explain for the public at large what Ramsar stands for?
Yeah, so the Ramsar was started back in the early 70s, late 60s, and it's an intergovernmental treaty. It was actually housed within the United Nations, and it was just to bring importance to our wetlands and to natural ecosystems throughout the world. So the treaties are actually not with the individual sites, but with nations. So your host nation for us would be the United States. And the United States signed on, I can't remember which year, to be a host nation, but there, I think it was in the 80s. I think it may be in your packet in the appendix. And so we only have 41 sites in the US since then that have signed on as a Ramsar site, but it's really just to bring coordination on an international scale. So while and the reason why NOAA wants the reserves to become Ramsar sites is we take system-wide data here at the South Slough. And all of the reserves, there's 30 currently, collect the same data. Of course, since we're celebrating our 50th, we're the oldest, so we have the most data. But we all collect the same data for meteorological data and water quality data. And that can help us look at our hyper local impacts here on a regional scale in the Pacific Northwest, and then of course, nationally across the US. If all of the reserves become Ramsar sites, now we can really share that data and do some comparisons on more of an international scale and scope. So there could be a lot of benefits in that data sharing.
That sounds terrific.
Does that help?
It helps me more than I had asked for. I really just, and I didn't explain this, and I think, what does the acronym stand for?
Oh,
I can share that. Ramsar, it's named after an Iranian city, which is the city where this came about.
With an idea.
So it's not an acronym, it's the name of a city.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
No, no apologies necessary.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Mr. Treasurer?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wonder, Ms. Fox, if you could shed any light, I guess this is an extension of the answer you gave to Secretary Griffin-Blade. Why are there so few in the United States? And we're talking about an application. Is there a reason that they might say no? Or, what's involved in the application?
the application, we actually, my predecessor, Bree, had started this, this movement. And I'm not sure exactly why we have so few of sites. I will say that the application doesn't seem to be too robust. It does not change our management. It doesn't change our rules or regulations. But you do have to basically, after you make your initial application, to say, how are you managing your spaces? What kind of, what kind of species do you have in your reserve? What kind of water bodies do you have? What kind of, different levels of ecosystems do you have? Then every 6 years, you have to do a refresher. But it's supposed to be a relatively easy lift, which is why I think NOAA has taken the charge to say, why don't all of the reserves do this? I was talking to my counterparts from the state of Alaska and also Hawaii, asking them if they were going to apply to be a Ramsar, and they had intended that they would. It just hasn't risen to the top of their priority list quite yet, but that they do intend to. Really, it'd be nice to have this whole West Coast focus, especially Washington. Padilla Bay is almost done with their application and their process. You do need to get your landowner's permission in order to apply. And so that has been one thing for some of our reserves, just making those connections with all the landowners. And if some of those are tribally owned or Indigenous people owned, just to make sure you have all of those connections. So you do have to have those letters of support as part of your packet. So if you have multiple landowners, as is the case, I think, with one of the reserves in Wisconsin, they're just working on getting all of their letters of support. So I don't truly know the answer to your question, but like most things in Oregon and South Slough, we tend to be the first and a pioneer. So.
Great. Thank you.
And you'll see also as Appendix B in your packet, an email or a letter of support from Erica Seiden, manager of the Ecosystems Program at NOAA, supporting this effort.
Thank you. I'm super excited about this. So key is to beat Washington to the punch. So I just have just make that happen. So I'll entertain a motion, Mr. Treasurer.
Madam Chair, I'm not sure that we need external confirmation that this is sort of international importance, but I'm happy to move that we approve the recommendation, authorize the reserve to apply.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Do I hear a second? Thank you, Madam Secretary. Are there any objections? Seeing none, motion carries. Thank you very much. Go forth.
Thank
Item number
you.
5.
All right, agenda item 5 is the South Slough National Estuarine Research Reserve Annual Report. And as you know, we ran out of time in June. So,
Sorry about that, team. Thanks for coming back. So-
yeah, and I really wanted to give Ms. Fox an opportunity to talk about the really great things. She's not going to read the entire report, and she's got some highlights, but given that we're here celebrating the 50th, it's important. So
Thank you so much. Now, I only started in this position 6 months ago, so I can take absolutely no credit for all the amazing work I'm about to share, but I look forward to sharing next year's report with you as well. So for 2023, the team accomplished so much, and I'm here, as Vicki said, just to present some highlights for the important work achieved for the reserve and our education, stewardship, and research programs. Ted, can you do next slide? I'm sorry. The Reserve's 2023 focus was to improve the understanding and stewardship of Pacific Northwest estuaries and coastal watersheds. There were 3 main areas that were targeted: climate change, habitat protection, and invasive species. Each of these topics are tackled through the 3 main programs of education, stewardship, and research. I'll discuss some of these main programs along with some other supporting programming with some highlights from last year. Next slide. South Sioux Reserve is known for its education programming. In 2023, we had an overall over 4,400 hours of learning hours offered to the public and schools via field trips, summer camps, and interpretive programming. More specifically, the Reserve served 2,120 students in classroom visits and field trips. We had 15 college and 3 high school interns who contributed over 4,000 hours of service in the areas of research, education, communications, and stewardship. 53 teachers received over 340 hours of professional development. The Visitor Center had over 3,000 people walk through the door over 253 days, and our community classes and outreach events hosted around 3,200 people. Next slide. While the South Slough Reserve is part of a larger reserve system that collects scientific data and information, we need to ensure that it's accessible to the decision makers, businesses, communities, and schools. Connecting the data and information to our coastal leaders and communities is the focus of the Coastal Training Program. During 2023, the Coastal Training Program offered 8 training courses attended by a total of 125 participants. The main training topics for 2023 included creating infographics, GIS remote sensing techniques and climate change impacts, accessible trail design, biochar kiln usage and demonstration, creating defensible spaces around structures, and installing beaver dam analogs for restoration. Next slide. Working with others on stewardship efforts within the reserve is a critical piece to our work. We actively work with our tribal nations to co-steward and collaboratively manage the reserve. Additionally, we partnered with more than 40 local natural and cultural resource professionals, gave public presentations to around 250 people, and actively engaged with about 450 students. Invasive species management is critical to the reserve so that native plants are not outcompeted, we sustain biodiversity, and we continue to support our healthy ecosystems. Over 500,000 square feet of invasive weeds were removed from the reserve by volunteers just last year as part of the Second Saturday Stewards program, and that is a lot. As for restoration, we officially kicked off the Wasson Creek Restoration Project, which is really exciting. It is a ridgetop to estuary project that will not only restore a 525-acre watershed, but will also serve as a living classroom so that we can learn from and improve our restoration techniques at a local, national, and global scale. Over $3.5 million was received from the bipartisan infrastructure law for implementation and monitoring of the Wasson Creek Restoration Project. The work includes land clearing and earth moving work to reroute channels, conduct forest restoration work, construct beaver dams that simulate naturally made dams by beavers, and conduct all associated monitoring, which started last year and will continue through 2027. Next slide. Many people think of education and stewardship when they think about the South Slough, but they don't realize how much research actually happens here at the reserve. Like our other reserves nationwide, we collect a lot of data through the year regarding water quality as well as meteorological data. This data supports understanding broader impacts for estuarine habitats that help predict climate change impacts, patterns, and improve climate resiliency, among other benefits. We also conduct our own research. In fact, last year, there was 36 research and monitoring projects. The research is helping us better understand our estuarine, wetland, and upland ecosystems. One specific research example focused on monitoring and researching the invasive five-spine crabs in the Coos estuary to better understand their abundance, distribution, life cycle, and impacts to native species. This research is really important because those invasive crabs can really outcompete Dungeness crab, which is really important to the local economy. These invasive crabs also disturb eelgrass beds, which is a keystone plant species that cleans our water, nurtures fish, absorbs carbon, produces oxygen, and helps protect our coastline. Partner research projects include studying effects of sea level rise to understand how much effect tidal wetland restoration might have on reducing storm and sea level rise related flooding in the Coos Bay area, among other research projects. We've also launched our own drone program to assist with research and monitoring, and we're the only one on the West Coast, I would add. The monitoring and mapping habitats in the reserve, such as eelgrass beds, emergent marsh, upland forests, and the Sitka spruce swamp will be greatly enhanced by the drone program. It also provides a new sense of scale and scope and public perception that sometimes our research projects and monitoring is hard to grasp just how large some of these projects are. Next slide. In addition to our 3 core programs of education, stewardship, and research, reserve staff are busy maintaining our facilities and the land the researchers, staff, and public use here every day. Last year, we were busy with multiple trail projects, including replacing boardwalks, installing new education platforms, expanding the kayak launch to improve safety for the public, upgrading one of the communication towers with a propane generator to improve better internet coverage. And I'm happy to share that we received additional federal grant funding for $170,000 for some projects, including upgrading the public restrooms here at the Visitor Center to increase accessibility, which we just finished, upgrading our front doors to the Visitor Center to make them ADA, it's about to happen, and getting all of our new exhibits, which we'll all visit after this meeting, in the Visitor Center. Additionally, we're making progress on our new front entrance to the reserve by partnering with the Friends of South Slough for a redesign. The redesign will increase visibility and improve safety, and it will expand our overflow parking, especially for our school buses, so they actually have a way to turn around. We'll also be laying cable to improve internet connectivity here at the Visitor Center, which has always been a challenge. We're very excited about that part. This larger project will exceed $1.6 million for in-funds leveraged from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration and our Friends group. So it's a huge project that will begin this fall. We just revised our boundary to incorporate adjacent land parcels that Reserve has purchased and managed over the years, and that was just finalized in May. We now officially have 6,542 acres within the boundary itself. Next slide. While South Slough Reserve spent a total of just over $3 million during 2023, we were able to leverage $1.6 million from NOAA through competitive grants, funding from our Friends group, the Friends of the South Slough, and through fees charged for rentals and permits. All of this made up for 51.48% of total funding for the reserve, with an increase of leverage funds 5.76 over calendar year 2022. In closing, South Slough had an incredibly busy and productive year conducting and supporting research, connecting with our coastal communities, and supporting our teachers and school children locally and throughout the state. That concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fox. Floor is open. Questions? Comments?
Chair, maybe I'd start. I know, Fox, you said this is a 6-month mark or thereabouts. So I appreciate your humility in introducing it, but I wonder if that might also give an opportunity for some fresh perspective. What are your biggest surprises 6 months in as you deliver this report?
That's a great question, Treasurer Reed. I think it's great to have a fresh perspective. I've been with the agency for 10 years now, or in October it'll be 10 years. And I think having that DSL background, but coming down here for that connectivity has been great. Under Director Walker, she's really made sure that South Slough doesn't feel like an island and is really part of the Department of State Lands, which I very much appreciate. I think what's been surprising for me, frankly, is I owned my own small business, and I almost feel like all of my environmental experience aside, running a small business has actually probably been the best prep for this position. It's a little bit like putting on a huge event every day, all the time. We could be at the farmer's market. We can be out at one of the schools. There's always something happening. It's like, who's on first? Where's the tent? Where's the table? Who's going to do this? And you're always kind of running around, and it's very family oriented here. And the most supportive environment. These folks come into the office every day here at the visitor center or down at the lab. And it doesn't matter if somebody has to do a marble murrelet survey at 4 a.m. or eelgrass broadcasting at like 5 a.m. They're up, they're out there, they're in their waders. And yeah, everyone pitches in no matter what their position is here. And it just seems, I think, yeah, everyone wears multiple hats. It's not just me, it's everyone here. And it really takes a village. And it is all these fine people behind me.
Thank you, Madam Secretary.
I am just very impressed, and I appreciate the depth of your experience. Excuse me, I'm sorry about that voice again. And this is a beautiful spot right here, and unfortunately today I'm not going to be able to take a trip with everybody to see it, but just knowing that it's there, it's all the world to me, growing up in an environment very unlike this environment, and coming to appreciate this part of the world and the beauty, and also remember how beautiful the space in Eastern Oregon that I was born and raised in. And it's all because in both cases that folks made a difference in preserving the natural wonder of this glorious state. So thank you for your work.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Well, I'm just thrilled to be here. Since coming into this job, just learning about the South Slough has been a highlight. So I'm glad to be here for the day. On the drones,
Mhm.
have you started? Are you going to do a video and like? Do you have?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I can't wait to see that, because it just makes a big difference when you can get to places that the drone photos just really make things accessible. Tell me more about these invasive crabs. Why do we have them?
Oh my gosh. The 5-spine invasive European green crab. Yes,
They
are.
sound bad.
They are bad. They're taking over, and they have been, and they're not unique to us. They are all the way from California going all the way up to Alaska. So their presence is really, really hefty. The governor of Washington actually made an emergency declaration over their green crab infestation. They are wreaking a lot of havoc with, frankly, a lot of other fish. It's not just our eelgrass beds, but also with crab, with Dungeness. So it can have a big impact on your local fishermen and economy. What I've been interested in is whether or not we can learn a little bit more about them to see if there's marketing ability for culinary, to see if that's a prospect. What I have been told, they're much smaller in size than some of our other crab, so it may not be as marketable to the restaurants. And I'm not sure. To date, I haven't found any restaurant that's actually serving these invasive green crabs. And here at South Slough, that would take the management commission to agree for allowing commercial harvesting and permitting. And we have not done that to date, but I think I'm interested in exploring if there's any local marketing that could be done. Like the Port of Bandon really created a new niche for themselves with sea urchin, and they're actually exporting a lot of that down to California, to the San Francisco area, for a lot of making quite a bit of money in the process. So I'm kind of curious if there could be a market on the flip side to see if they can help us control this, because we allow recreation take of the green crab, but I don't think that there's that many folks that are coming out to actually do it. So what we've been focusing on now is really understanding their abundance, understanding their life cycle, their molting, just trying to learn more about why they tend to have so much of a presence in certain areas of the bay versus other areas. So I know that in our September event is going to occur at the Coos History Museum, and that's a hot spot for these invasive crabs that they tend to have a really high population there. So we're actually going to do, the Invasive Species Council is hosting a small event to show the public, this is what they look like, this is to trap them and show them, and they're going to be out at that area of the dock. So we're in the process of learning all about them. We do have 2 interns this year too that have been studying their life cycle and also looking through the culinary lens again, what could be possible with these green crabs and see if it can catch on. And that's through the Southwestern Oregon Community College, those 2 students. Walk.
Well, we definitely have to take on the green crab. I'm like, we need a plan, right? So thank you for sharing that. Yeah, Mr. Treasurer.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I wonder also if we're thinking ahead a year from now, I don't know if we'll be in the same physical space, but when you're delivering next year's report, any previews, any things that we should be thinking of, what your priorities are going to be aside from the much lower numbers we're going to see of green crabs?
I love that. I would say I'm really interested in, we've been doing so much work, Allie Helms, especially here at the South Slough, have been doing so much work on eelgrass, really looking at how we've had a record decline in past years, really better understanding due to temperature change and different things with climate change, how we can increase our important eelgrass habitat, and through broadcasting or transplanting seeds, growing them in different areas, different substrates, different depths. We just had our fellow do a wonderful presentation for her master's thesis defense on eelgrass. So I'm excited to see where this research can keep propelling us on that front. And also the Wasson Creek Restoration Project is so huge right now. We've got all the earth moving work happening with our channel relocation and tipping different trees for large debris, bringing back that connectivity to basically take an area that was converted to upland with just invasive reed canary grass and turning it back to a tidally influenced wetland. And it can act as a carbon sink. It can help with our sedimentation, our sea level rise, with our marsh revegetation. We're restoring. Part of that project will also bring back Sitka spruce forested wetlands, which are huge for blue carbon. So I'm excited to tell you about all of those things. It's going to be very exciting.
I'm excited to hear about it. Thank you.
Back to green crabs. I had known there were some culinary things that have been done with it, and I'm fond of bourbon. So I'm not sure I'm going to drink this one, but the University of New Hampshire worked with Tamworth Distilling to create a bourbon that's green crab flavored. And
Like demand from the audience.
because New England's coastal ecosystem is inundated with these green crabs as well as us. So I don't know how that's going to taste. But anyway, there are lots of options for trying to deal with these green crabs.
You will report back, right?
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Take one for the team.
Right. And they're European, so you would think there's
Yeah.
something. We'll have to get OSU's Food Innovation Center on it too and be like, I think we can figure this out.
It's called Crab Trapper Whiskey. And it starts with a modified sour mash bourbon base aged for nearly 4 years that they say adds enough character to stand up to the infusing and flavoring. From there, thousands of green crabs, over 90 pounds worth, harvested from Seabrook, New Hampshire, were cooked down to a crab stock, fortified with neutral grain spirits, and distilled into the ideal crab essence. Finally, this essence was blended in with the bourbon base and steeped with a custom spice blend mixture consisting of paprika, bay, mustard seed, coriander seed, dill seed, cinnamon, clove, and allspice, reminiscent of a low country boil. The results, which are bottled at 51% ABV, are described as presenting notes of maple, vanilla, and caramel on the nose, flavored by cinnamon, clove, and allspice. Distillery founder Stephen Grass described the whole thing as a briny and better fireball. So,
Madam Chair, I think if we're gonna be able to live up to the royalty agreements, the director surely arranged, gonna have to work on the delivery here.
I don't know. I think someone was drunk when they made that.
it was drunk when they made that?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. So I'm just curious enough to try it. One of our researchers here, Sean, he's been working on green crabs and he did an interview with NPR. And they asked him if he had ever tasted one yet. And he said, no. Now, I think Sean's going to need to do that because he's encouraging people to try them for culinary purposes. But anyway, so much for the green crab that I cracked my own Dungeness crab this weekend. I wanted to get some cracked because it's messy to crack it yourself. But where I was at, they only had the cracked. So I did that, and it's a lot of work. It took me 45 minutes to do 2 crabs. So these green crabs are much smaller, so I'm not quite sure. You're going to probably have to boil them down into that crab essence, but
Thank you for sharing that, Director Walker.
yeah, you're welcome. All right. Well, any other questions for Ms. Fox?
I don't think so. Thank you for the report. We appreciate everyone on the team here for that. Thank you.
Great. All right. Well, now I'm going to ask Allie Ryan Hansen, our communications director, to come up and talk about our strategic plan. That'll take us up to about noon. And then I have 2 brief items under other that should take us to 12:15.
All right, item number 6. Hello, welcome. Just state your name for the record.
I shall. Good morning. For the record, Governor Kotek, Treasurer Reed, Secretary Griffin Belade. My name is Allie Ryan Hansen. I'm DSL's Communications Director, and I use she, her pronouns. It's my pleasure to present you with the department's Strategic Action Plan Results Report for fiscal years 2023 and 2024. These results reports are how we show you and how we show Oregonians the progress we've made on our strategic goals and how those projects are measurably moving or not moving the needle toward those very big goals. Am I saying, do I need to?
Tell me.
Okay, slide.
Oh, okay. You can do it yourself if you like.
Okay, would I
Point it.
point
back
it-
right
point it,
up
Jessica?
Jessica's
Okay.
section.
Okay. Okay, the department has four strategic goals. These are our big, bold statements of how we are going to help Oregon thrive, support our schools, and do so with exceptional service and within a great workplace. It's a little bit disconcerting to have the slide deck behind me. Did it go? Somebody will tell me if it doesn't, right? Okay. So each of these 4 agency-wide goals has specific outcomes, simple statements of results. Those are paired with strategies for how we'll actually achieve those results and specific projects that are grouped by strategy. So the actual work of our strategic plan is 79 projects mapped to 29 strategies for achieving 11 outcomes. We also have specific project progress objectives, and that's really what we're focused on here today. Our 2-year action plan identified the specific strategic projects that DSL wanted to work on in fiscal years 23 and 24. That included both focus projects as well as projects that advance outcomes. The 5 focus projects are major initiatives that significantly contribute to multiple strategic goals and related metrics and support achieving many of the outcomes within each goal. And then the projects that advance outcomes are those that help us make project progress toward a specific outcome. And then we'll meet the overall goal by achieving the suite of outcomes within each of those goals. 33 projects are in this action plan. So across all goals, we met 34, or we completed 34% of the projects that were in the action plan. 68% of the projects were in progress, and all of them are on track to be complete by the end of this overall strategic plan timeframe. And now I'm going to move to talking numbers. Note here for all goals, this is okay, best available. I know y'all will tell me if it didn't go, but it's still when I can't see it, it's very nerve-wracking. Best available data. Some of the data that we collect is based on the fiscal year. Some of it was available for the most recent, some was not. So what we've got here is the best we've had. The exceptional service goal has 4 outcomes: improving service, increasing access to information and services, increasing awareness and understanding of what we do, and supporting our staff and providing exceptional service. We have 4 progress objectives for this goal. We met one of them, and that is continuous improvement in reaching people. We want to connect people with information, and we saw increases in 4 of the 4 channels that we tracked. I will note that this does not include our website. We have a new website, and there was a change in how Google reports their analytics, so we didn't have a full year of data. We are going to be starting fresh with a new baseline year. And then we are also looking to support our team. We want to see continuous improvement in the questions that are specifically aimed at, do you have what you need to provide exceptional service? One of those 2 indicators improved. Proactive communication. Our goal is to have 100% of our programs with a current communications plan. We did not achieve that within this timeframe. That's a priority moving forward for the rest of the strategic plan years. We are also going to adjust that indicator because we now have 2 more programs than we did when we began. So we're really looking at 6 programs that need to have a strategic plan. And then finally, we are looking to have continuous improvement in customer satisfaction. We want to see our customer satisfaction increase with every survey that we do. That did not happen with the most recent survey that we conducted just this last year. I have some thoughts. We have some thoughts on why that is. I would note, we aim high with our customer satisfaction. The target is 93%. We have been averaging 80 percentile for most over the last few years. This year, we're looking at 70s. I would not call that C-level, for an agency that does what we do. We have a regulatory role. We have South Slough. We have multiple ways in which we serve the public, and people have a broad spectrum of feelings about that. So, these are not what we had hoped for, but certainly not dismal. Treasurer Reed, did you have
I do. I think I'm getting a little confused. So you said 93%. Are we also talking about the second column from the left here, the continuous improvement in customer satisfaction? It's hard to read those numbers, but I'd love to hear how.
Yeah.
Maybe I've confused 2 different things, but if 93% and what I'm reading here is increase, the target is increase. I assume that I'm supposed to say with every biennial survey.
It is.
How do those relate? Maybe I'm just confused.
Thank you, Governor Kojak, Treasurer Reed. So we're marching toward the target of 93%. We're using for this
On each of those, or
for all of them.
Okay.
So we're aiming for 93%.
Okay.
And I do want to note, this is a key performance measure. All state agencies ask the same 6 questions, and we're all aiming for that target of 93%
Okay.
satisfaction. So that's the target, but we also want to see it go up every year. And so 2022 on the left is what we were at when we surveyed last. 2024 on the right is what we're at when we did it just this summer. So they all went down, some of them more than others. So we want to see it go up progressively until we hit 93%. And then, you know, for that, for that elusive 100, I don't know if we're setting ourselves up for sadness there, but that's what that's aiming for.
It's helpful, thank you.
Did it change? Okay.
Actually, before we move on, since we're on that one, so thank you for setting strong goals and for tracking these things. You know, across the state enterprise, we are working on a customer service policy. You know, these are key performance measures for our agencies. This is maybe a little bit of wonky, so we can take it offline, as the analysis of how many responses you get and what the, you know, if there's any kind of analytics around, well, we had more people last year or more people this year, and how that affects your percentages. So like really understanding that, because we take a very raw number of percentage, but there's so much that could go into that. If you only got 2 people to respond, it's going to look different, right? So but I really appreciate you doing this, even if it's not what you want it to be. We have to keep doing this, and it's just part of the work.
Governor Kotek, certainly. And your point is well taken. You know, we just did the survey, so we have not performed the full analysis, but slightly fewer participants than last time. And I think slightly less participation from our South Slough. And South Slough is a much loved place, as you
Happy
are all
customers here,
experiencing
yes.
why. So, you know, different suite of perspectives. And then, you know, we talked with you a little bit in June about the impacts of inadequate staffing on our day-to-day service, and just an initial read of those comments. Our customers are really feeling the impacts on service delivery, and it is affecting their numbers when they're clicking those boxes for us in our survey too. So it's, you know, we're seeing affirmation from the folks we're serving of what we ourselves are experiencing as we're serving them, with folks having more work than can be done, and it really affecting the people we serve. So.
Governor, may I make? just
Yes, Madam Secretary.
an observation? I really appreciate the transparency of why you're not at the numbers that you want to be. And I also appreciate your explanation of what some of the factors are going into that. I think it's good to know both as decision makers. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, the next goal is Thriving Oregon. The outcomes we are aiming toward there are enhanced lands and waters. Gosh darn it. Did it do it? There we go. Enhanced lands and waters, widespread stewardship of lands and waters, and increased opportunities for students and teachers. Here we actually have 2 progress indicators that we developed specifically for the strategic plan. The first is stewardship tools and best practices. Our team has a lot of expertise in managing and restoring wetlands, waterways, and lands, and we want to make that information and those resources available to everyone who has a role in caring for natural resources themselves. And we also want to tell people when we have those tools available for widespread use. So what we're measuring here is the number of tools and best practices that are available, and the number of promotional actions that we took. We want to see it go up every year. This is our aiming of increased availability. And we did well. We are making more tools and resources, and we are telling people about it with increased frequency. The next new objective is related to climate and wildfire resilience. We want to be continuously investing in the research, the projects, the practices that are going to help our lands become more resilient to climate change and wildfire. So here we are measuring both resilience actions the rangeland acres that we treat for juniper and noxious weeds, the percentage of South Slough acres restored, and the percentage of DSL managed forest lands that are treated for juniper and noxious weeds. This is a metric that is, we simply want to be doing those things and showing that we are doing those things with numbers. So it's we did it, and at what scale. So good, excellent. I mean, first effort out of the gate. And then the next objective is protecting wetlands, not net loss of wetlands there. The target is 0. We met that target in fiscal year 23. A note on that particular metric, it is a snapshot in time. We went up 60 wetland acres this year. That was due to a mitigation bank being created. We are not banking those wetlands to add them. It's not like a savings account. We don't want to keep them. They're there to be spent. So in future years, we see this number go up and down as we would expect it to. The goal is 0, to have there be no net loss. And then finally, people served at SOU Reserve. We are looking to increase the number of people we serve every year. Went up in fiscal year 23, down fiscal year 24. The team here thinks that is due to travel costs, that fewer folks are traveling due to costs.
Except when we get that international designation.
When we
Everybody's
get that,
good.
when we become
I'm
a
s-
destination, a
Right.
worldwide destination, I think we're gonna see that number turn right
That's right.
around. Yeah.
Does that, to follow up on that, is that the same thinking around the pretty massive, essentially doubling in the previous? Did we get less expensive, or what else is going on there?
I think COVID.
That's recovery from COVID?
Mhm.
Okay.
Thank you, Patricia. No, that's what I thought. It's good to have confirmation from the expert behind me. Yeah.
I'd be curious if those align or trend with like local tourism numbers as well, right? So I would assume there is some, because I'd be curious if those numbers go up and yours are not, but
Governor, certainly an interesting thing to look at. Is that the magic? I should have mentioned at the beginning, everything I'm saying, the actual numbers and they're in your packet, if worse comes to worse.
It's finding anything. The internet's not exactly stable.
If only, if only we were able to invest in the stability of our internet access here at South Slough Reserve.
Remodel the entrance.
Okay. I don't want to hold us up, so I think I'll continue with the supporting schools. We're on agenda item 6. I'm on page 4 of 5. Supporting schools has a single outcome. We want to increase net revenue for the Common School Fund. And we are tracking here key performance measures that are related to revenue. Here we saw one of those KPMs met target, and that was a % of South Slough National Estuarine Research Reserve operations funded from non-common school fund sources. Our South Slough team is absolutely killing it. 46%. The target is 25. So woohoo, South Slough. And then the other 4 tracked measures did not meet target. And here I'm going to jump ahead a little bit to talk about why, some considerations for why. Many of the projects that we are working on in the strategic plan have anticipated significant positive impacts on revenue production.
That slide you want to be
I
on
want to be
the
on
brown
the
one.
brown one.
The brown one, said the one right before it.
there is a whole bunch of stuff that we are working on that is specifically aimed at addressing revenue and the health of the common school fund. There we go. So for example, that percent in annual cash deposited to the common school fund, that negative 47%. In the previous fiscal year, we deposited the $120 million for the Elliott decoupling. So that is where you get that. And then I would also call your attention, percentage of forest land program revenue used for administrative and operational costs. The Elliott is in there for this fiscal year, which is the fiscal year 23 is our most recent number there. So these are still reflective of the situation at the end of the previous fiscal year. And then we just are targeting this with so many in progress things, whether it's the Elliott, securing funding for abandoned and derelict vessels, the new management plan for school lands, which has a number of ways in which we're aiming to increase revenue. Those are all things that are directly aimed at this particular objective. So it's going to be really interesting to see when the numbers get run for the fiscal year we just finished and for future years as these projects are beginning and starting to move the needle there.
Nice question, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. I wonder how, and maybe it's just lack of memory. I recognize it takes time, but can you help me recall why we decided that 25% was the target with respect to operations funded from non-common school? Why is that not zero?
Governor Kotek, Treasury, I'm going to look to Director Walker. Do you have a memory of why we did not? It's the key performance measure. So, and that one I think has been a relatively stable KPM. We've aimed at that target for years. I do not have a good recollection of why it was
Jean.
0, not 25.
Jean does. We're going to bring Jean and Gina.
Making me feel better if it's not just me, it's forgotten.
Yeah.
It seems like it should be zero, at least as a target.
Thank you, Jean.
Hi, for the record, I'm Jean Straight. I'm the Deputy Director for Administration. So that, like Ali said, that's been a KPM. I think the goal is to have it be zero, but it's unrealistic with how the funding from the federal program, because that's the one for the South Slough. And it's the 25% is a more realistic, and we hope to have better. And it's in lines with other grant programs with what a matching would be. We're fortunate. A lot of the time we get a lot more than that from NOAA, but it's just usually a 25% match is not an uncommon thing to have for federal funding.
I guess it's the distinction between a target and a goal. To remind myself of that. Okay.
It's probably not the best answer, but
It's the answer you
But-
have.
But I get the treasurer's point, ideally, but that's helpful to know why the 25% for the match, but
yeah.
no, I get what you're putting down, Mr. Treasurer, so thank you.
And as you know, Mr. Treasurer, members of the board, this South Slough used to be funded with general fund when it wasn't originally created in 1974. And it was given to the department to manage. And I actually think they've done a tremendous job here of increasing the match every year. So they do a really good job, but we are responsible for funding. And as you know, Mr. Treasurer, you're the only one on the board still when I first came on as director, y'all asked me to look into other management opportunities. And me and the previous director, Bree Ednock, did look into that for a 2-year period, and it was determined this was the best option, was to keep it with the Department of State Lands, because we're about educating children, funding schools, and that's exactly what they do here at the South Slough. They provide research, but they also educate children and teachers, and no one else was willing to take on the management responsibilities of funding. So here it lies, and here we accept it, and we have found a very symbiotic relationship and support the work here and do what we can to keep those costs down.
Thank you, Director.
Okay. Which
Brings us to the
brings
last
us
slide.
to the last slide. Ted, if you, thank you. Our final goal is great workplace. Here we are aiming at outcomes of encouraging engagement and growth, supporting work-life balance, and retaining and sharing acquired knowledge. The objectives here, the objective that we're able to report on is perpetual employee satisfaction. We're trying to improve or maintain ratings for all questions with every employee satisfaction survey. The action plan result is 53% of questions maintained or improved ratings in fiscal year 23 when the last survey was conducted. We are going to need new metrics for great workplace. We are participating in the Gallup survey, as all state agencies are. So we'll be looking at that to determine which of those make sense to also be a strategic objective for the great workplace goal. And that is the end of my slides. Thank goodness, I think. I just wanted to take a moment to look forward a little bit and offer a few considerations for these results. You know, the staffing, not having sufficient staff to provide day-to-day service, to advance strategic work, to meet performance targets is the reality of our situation right now. And I think you see that in the results before you today. We're hopeful that the 2025-27 request, the policy option package that's in that request, will help us both with those daily service impacts as well as with our strategic efforts. We are expecting a positive impact of everything that's in progress with the strategic plan. And then finally, you know, the reality of the capacity to work on these projects. These are very much, it's me sitting before y'all today, but these are very much team projects. I think every person in the agency has a role in some way in these projects, and many of us have multiple roles. So there are certainly intersections with capacity for teams like information technology or finance or communications, where the work of our programs is, you know, happening within the program, but then you hit a bottleneck when it comes to capacity for agency-wide teams. So we're evaluating that. And then we recognize that 38 projects is a lot to be taking on in 2 years. So our eyes are always very big and excited with the thought of getting more done for Oregonians. So we're going to be looking at that as well, confirming priorities, refining project planning as we go into the final 2 years of our strategic plan. With that, any last questions for me?
I think the prioritization is always difficult, and that's a good thing to be thinking about.
It's also important, and everybody is very passionate, so.
Well, and I appreciate the team being bold, trying new things, doing a lot of things, and there's a consistent disconnect between what people want us to do and what we are resourced to do. So we'll continue to work on that. I just had one little quick question, which was, what is your most active and popular social media channel? Are you popular on Instagram? What's your most? I'm just curious.
Yeah, Katrina, would you? Katrina Scotto DiCarlo is our social media guru, and she's reporting our Instagram account,
Instagram?
and it's Origins of Land.
Okay.
at Oregon State Lands. If you're not following, why not? It's fabulous. Fabulous.
We will find out if we're following, so
You-
gotcha.
You are. Governor.
Everybody should be following on Instagram for sure.
I believe
Okay.
you all are, and you
Excellent.
all actively share, which has undoubtedly helped with our reach. So thank you.
Yeah, well, just for the South Slough folks, cute animals, key. So, any other comments, Mr. Treasurer?
Madam Chair, thank you. I wanted, I think I was so interested in that question around the target that I got it backwards. It should be 100 non-common school fund resources that are funding things. But to that end, just to support the governor's point, I appreciate the prioritization in particular. I'm sort of a broken record here on those questions about other funds, but the work on adjusting fee levels and derelict vessels, I think, deserves a particular recognition. I appreciate pushing forward on that. Always will hear me encouraging you on that front, because it is, I think, consistent with the mission of making sure that common school fund research and common schools for the other things. So thank you for that focus.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. Madam Secretary, anything else?
Are we coming to the end?
We have one more item.
Okay, I'll wait.
Okay. Well, we're done on this item. If you have
Yeah.
anything about that, okay. And then I believe we have
A couple others.
other from the,
Yeah,
thank you
other.
very much. Excellent report.
Thank you, Ally.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your work. I'm glad you mentioned, Mr. Treasurer, abandoned derelict vessels. I want to bring your attention to the front page of the World newspaper today. You also can buy it for $2. Wow. Newspapers have gone up a lot, but it's a surprise that there's even a paper newspaper. But on the front page, derelict vessel removed from Empire. And this would not have been possible without the funding that we received last session to establish the ADV program. It's a very well done article. Bree Laughlin is the reporter. It took a lot of work with the Coos County Sheriff's Office, the Port of Coos Bay, and Coast Guard, U.S. Coast Guard, and others to make this happen. And this boat is now sitting at Billiter Marine, waiting to be made seaworthy so it can be transported to Reedsport, yet another coastal community where it will be decommissioned and dismantled. I will tell you that that boat was first built in 1938 in Quebec, Canada. It was the largest arc welded ship ever built in Canada, and had a specific propulsion system. And the gentleman who owned it bought it for $60,000. And it has now cost us quite a bit of money. I've not had the total bill yet, but it's a lot more than the $60,000 that he paid for it. So we continue to do the work, and we'll have another update for you in October about these boats. But I can tell you the local community, and myself included, are so happy not to see that structure in the water. So now the last thing I wanted to talk to you about is a concept that I just learned about this year in the last several months, and it's called geologic carbon sequestration. I want to talk about how this is important and how it can be beneficial to school lands. The Department of State Lands continuously examines how Oregon school lands can be managed to benefit current and future generations, evaluating strategies for producing revenue, and also recognizing the potential for department-managed lands to contribute in other ways. And you'll be seeing our 10-year land management plan will come before you in October. It expired and we created a new plan, and we're excited about it. The department has also been working with other natural resource agencies to identify strategies for collectively achieving the state's climate goals. There are many opportunities for concurrently expanding and diversifying revenue while contributing to climate goals, particularly in the area of carbon sequestration. Carbon sequestration is the process by which carbon dioxide is removed from the atmosphere and permanently stored. United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change has identified carbon sequestration as integral to reducing global climate change. And we've all seen what's happened. Increased heat in the summers, less water and rain. So climate change is really important to understand, and carbon sequestration is important to solving that issue. It reduces the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and can generate revenue through the sale of carbon credits, fee-based programs, or other funding mechanisms. Now we're getting close to what I wanted to talk about. The department oversees more natural and working lands than any other state agency, which positions us well for managing school, forest lands, rangelands, and other lands for natural carbon sequestration. Our extensive ownership in Northeast Oregon, however, also presents opportunities for storing carbon dioxide in underground rock formations in a process known as geologic carbon sequestration. This was so exciting. I knew nothing about it until Roy De Sterret, the director of DOGAMI, the Department of Geology and Mineral Industries, talked to me about it, and I'm all in. I think this is wonderful. So Oregon's geology has the potential for large-scale storage of carbon dioxide. Northeast Oregon's Columbia Basin, with its underlying basalt formations, has been recognized by the U.S. Geological Survey as an area of geologic carbon sequestration study and opportunity, one of two in the entire Pacific Northwest. Thousands of acres of school lands are in the identified opportunity area, and all have, oh, he's already done that. Thank you, Ted. This is our ownership and up along the Columbia, and the DSL management lands, the purple are, we own the surface and subsurface, and the green, we only own the surface, and in the gray, we only own the subsurface. So what does that mean? Thousands of acres are identified as an opportunity. Wasco County, Sherman County, Gillum, Morrow, Umatilla, Union, and Wallowa counties all have parcels that we are looking at. There are 16 parcels totaling 1,558 acres where we own both the surface and subsurface. And that's going to be important as I continue to talk to you about this. Technology captures the carbon dioxide and geology stores it. Innovative technologies are used to capture and secure that carbon dioxide, either at the point of emission or by pulling it directly from the atmosphere. The carbon dioxide is then converted into a liquid, which can then be safely and permanently stored thousands of feet underground. School lands have the potential for both capture and storage of carbon dioxide. Direct air capture technology removes the carbon dioxide that's already in the atmosphere. Leasing school lands for these facilities could be a significant revenue generator alongside the storage of carbon dioxide in the subsurface. Growing recognition that removal of carbon dioxide from the atmosphere is integral to meeting those climate goals, as I mentioned. In 2023, the bipartisan infrastructure law provided up to $1.2 billion for development of large-scale direct air capture facilities in Texas and Louisiana. Together, these projects are anticipated to remove more than 2 million metric tons of carbon dioxide annually and create 4,800 jobs. State agencies are working together to determine needs and next steps to go from potential to shovel-ready projects. Oregon needs additional geologic research as well as, excuse me, the development of regulatory structures, ownership of geologic pore space, which is that space down deep into the basalt, monetization models, and other analyses. The department is gathering additional information in collaboration with DOGAMI and other agencies, and will provide updates to you as we move forward. Roy Destira, Dogami's director, will be present at the October Land Board to give us better understanding and presentation about it. He's an expert on this, not me. So I'm really excited to bring him in and have him talk about the potential. And what I wanted to do today was simply alert you to this process and kind of begin to think about it. And then in October, we'll have more information for you. Of course, my first question when Roy talked to me about this was, well, what about earthquakes? And that issue is taken care of. And he will discuss how that is monitored and all of the work that goes into these test wells. And I'm just very excited about it. These test wells, he said, these wells, if it proves to be workable, this well would be about 40 years that it would last. So that provides jobs and opportunities and income into the Common School Fund. But most importantly, it takes carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. So I'm thrilled. And I look forward to sharing more with you in October. Because don't ask me any of the technical scientific questions. That's not for me to talk about because I don't have the answers.
Thank you, Director Walker. I look forward to the presentation in October. On the regulatory framework, is it bulk, is the most of that for DSL because of the regulatory structure? Like, what would that entail? I would like to get a little bit more on that, like, you know, how many agencies, but is that, I mean, the monetization, it reminds me of the conversation we had about the undersea cables and all that stuff as
Right.
well, right? Very similar in that regard, like, how do we create new structures to take advantage of economic opportunities that we might not have really thought through? So,
Yeah, exactly. And I'll let Director Destira know that those are some of the issues you're looking at going forward. But I just see it as a way to get us out of this downhill slide we're in right now with carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and the climate change that's happened. I mean, you've seen on the news all week long, the flooding. Charleston, the city of Charleston is just inundated, and the Northeast, and we had it, California had it. It's just untenable. And I worry, you know, I'm 68 years old, and I have grandchildren that are 3, 5, 7, and 3, 5, 9, and 11, soon to be 11. And I worry about what the future is for my grandchildren and for the other children in the world. Not only do we have war across the world right now, but that's very sad. But we have to solve this climate problem that's critical to the survival of the species.
absolutely. Thank you, Director Walker.
You're welcome.
Any question? Yes.
I
Madam
do have
Secretary.
one question because having lived in Eastern Oregon, I know that they're always suspicious. Folks are always suspicious, or often suspicious. And has there been any community input or preparation for this?
You know, that's an excellent question, Madam Secretary. And no, that we have not started that yet. Today was the first day that I talked about it openly. We've been talking about it internally. And I wanted to let the land board know about this. And we will begin having those conversations, but it's too early yet. And we will have to socialize it with the public. And you're right, people always have differing opinions about things. Sometimes they have thoughts that aren't valid about the outcomes. Sometimes they have good thoughts about how we can improve. So that's the thing about public awareness and opinion, is to search out the truth and
Right.
work through it.
Well, and I mean, I believe we all are aware of the some of the issues in Eastern Oregon in particular involve not believing in the government or feeling, or folks feeling like that they're always getting projects like this and dumped on, and they're
Right.
And I don't think that, I mean, I just really would encourage a lot of community input and really listening to what people have to say. And I'm sure that's the case in many communities in Oregon, but it certainly is there.
Well, Madam Secretary, I can tell you with experience from the Elliott State Forest to becoming the Elliott State Research Forest, there's been a lot of public conversation and a lot of opinions about it. And I've been at it for 6 years, and I want to tie it up in a nice little bow before next July of 2025, when I walk out the door. And we are so close to, we have resolved, I think, the differences. What we're doing now is working on creating the research aspect and continuing to work with our tribal nations and finding the best way to continue to work together. But I think we have come over the hump of all the very difficult conversations. So we have a lot of experience at the department with that.
I'm sure you do.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Thank you, Director Walker. Treasurer Reed, any comments? Nope. Well, that brings us to the end of our agenda. I want to thank everyone for the participation today. Again, it's wonderful to be here on the South Slough. And we meet again in October. And with that, I will adjourn our meeting for today. Thanks very much.
Oh, no, it's so weird.